Welcome to Divine Downloads. I'm your host, Cassandra, and today we have an extra special episode for you. We are getting some answers from the afterlife with our host, author Nanci Danison. Nanci has died 3 different times and had 3 different near-death experiences where she went into the afterlife and downloaded so many knowings about how manifestation works, about what the afterlife is and what we experience there, of the truth of our souls. And I am just ecstatic to share this interview with you. I do want to let you know that some of the information in this interview might be triggering depending on certain belief systems you may hold. And I just ask you to keep an open mind and hear this incredible experience of Nanci's. And if you're anything like me, if you ground down into your heart center and listen from your heart, you're going to find that so much of it rings so true on a soul level. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so let's just dive in.
Okay,
Nanci, I am so excited to speak with you today. This, for my listeners, they know I've been doing this podcast for years. I barely even bring on guests anymore. I'm super picky. And I was ecstatic when I was introduced to you because I had been on my own journey reading about near-death experiences because I lost my grandma in January this year, and she was like, we were very close in life, and still have been very close in her being in her spirit form. And it set me off on this path where I just felt so guided after her passing to read all of these books on Nde Is, which for anyone who's listening and doesn't know what an Nde is, it's a near-death experience. And it's an experience, and feel free to pop in and correct me here if you think it's wrong, but an experience where someone clinically, in hospital terms, passes away, has some sort of mystical experience in that time, and then is resuscitated. Is that correct?
yes, except that I would say instead of having a mystical experience, I would say we enter the afterlife.
We enter the afterlife.
We start living in the afterlife and then return.
We start living. I love that. And that's why I've been so fascinated about it, because so my grandma, actually, I never got to speak to her about her experience, but she did have, before she officially passed on, she had a moment where she passed away and was dead for 4 minutes and then was brought back. And I always had a feeling that she had experienced something there that made her even more ready to go when she went, or comfortable with going, maybe is a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, I think we have to kick off, and I know, I'm sure you've told this story so many times, but just for the context of the other concepts we're going to get into in this podcast, would you mind telling the listeners about your near-death experience?
Well, I've had.
I mean, like, just the context of it, of like how you passed away, and maybe where you're at in your time, where you were at in your life in that moment, so we can kind of contrast it to some of the realizations that you've had.
Okay. Well, I've had 3 afterlife experiences. The first one is the one I call the big one. That's the one that I got all the information in. Briefly, I was an attorney. I've been practicing law for I don't know how many years. But my law firm was kind enough to have a mobile mammography unit come to our parking lot. And so all the women in the firm were able to go out and get a mammogram. And so I did. and it was discovered that I had lesions in my breast. So I was in for, um, they would call it a lumpectomy now. Um, and before the surgeon did the lumpectomy, I had a procedure where a radiologist stuck a large needle with a wire inside of it into my breast twice. And all that was used was a local anesthetic for the skin. And that caused me to die from a combination of factors. I went into the light, was completely saturated with unconditional love, bliss, and acceptance. That's the thing that surprised me, was the complete and total acceptance of me and who I was and what I'd done, no matter how horrible I had been in human life. I saw my body while I was down in the mammography room while I was in the afterlife. I was told about manifesting, and that we literally manifest the physical experiences that our human bodies have. And I was shown 3 times in the afterlife how that works. So I manifested 3 different extremely Earth-like environments just by thinking the words. I met my 5 most beloved eternal friends, who were in the form of what I was calling at the time beings of energy, or energy beings. I since started calling them beings of light, because that's what other near-death experiencers call them. I had a life review, which I pretty much ignored, because at the same time I got back all the memories of the hundreds and hundreds of other physical lifetimes I had lived all over the universe, all kinds of creatures and things. And I thought that was a lot more interesting.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And after that, I was given the answers to my most burning questions, which were, what is God? What am I? What does God expect of me? What's the purpose of life? Where's heaven? Where's hell? And what's the one true religion? Because I was a Roman Catholic, and I had been taught my whole life that that was the one true religion. And I was just curious to see how true that was.
Oh my God. Well, we're going to have to ask you all those answers.
Well, the answers were nothing remotely similar to what my church had taught me, or what my parents or teachers had taught me. And I was so angry that I hadn't been told the truth. I felt like, what, did people think I was too stupid to understand the truth? Or, this is so simple. The afterlife and source and life and death, everything is so beautiful and simple. Why was that information held from me? And I think in response, I was shown a documentary type history of Earth, from its creation to its demise, and how religions developed among humans, over the eons and eons. And after that, I moved into a different stage of afterlife. The afterlife is just life. And just like in human life, where there are stages where you've got childhood, adolescence, adulthood, seniors, like I am now, in the afterlife, there are stages. And I moved into another stage where because we're pure energy and intelligence, can merge our energy into another light being and experience their lives, their physical lives, either as them or as us. And I spent a long time doing that. I could merge into I met my 5, dearest friends. They were my eternal beloved friends, none of whom I'd ever experienced in, the physical world. But I could merge into 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or all 5 of them at the same time and experience their lives vicariously. And I was told that I had to get used to doing that, because the next stage was doing the same thing with the core energy of source. Now, the God that I got to know intimately and merged into wasn't anything like a human. It's an energy source. It's the creator of the universe. And I guess it's kind of closer to a sun, the sun, than it is to a human being. It was this intelligent, loving, creative, funny, uh, everything you can imagine that's good and wonderful energy source. You had personality and character traits. While I was blending into or awakening as the source, I saw the entire creation of the universe from the beginning, and I watched it as Nanci. I remembered it as source. And then I had this oh, not a voice exactly, but information coming into my head explaining what was going on. So I not only watched it, but I got knowings about what was going on.
Wow.
And when that was over, I literally woke up to the realization that I was never this poor, miserable little human creature, that I was never alone. I was never cast out there with no help and no support, but that in fact I am source, and that the character that I know of as Nanci is really just one of the many, many personalities within source, and that I chose to incarnate, and I chose and created all the events of my life. It was mind blowing.
I can't imagine. I have so many questions.
Okay, well,
we'll let you continue though. I'll let you
well,
finish.
I've just got a little bit more. After all this information and experience, I kept saying to myself, particularly after I watched that history of religions on Earth, I kept saying to myself, somebody ought to tell those people. Somebody ought to tell those people. And the next thing I know, I'm on my way back to my body, and I'm saying, I didn't mean me. And my 5 light being friends were repeating over and over in my ears, love is all that matters. Love is all that truly matters. And I kept repeating over and over, shut up, I'm trying to memorize all this stuff that I learned. And I got back into the body, and it took, from the time that the radiologist and the radiology technician found me, took a half an hour for my blood pressure to come back up to normal. And they went ahead and went forward with the surgery. But it changed my life profoundly. I decided to leave my 270 attorney prestigious law firm, go out on my own. And I haven't looked back since.
Wow. Oh my God. That is just incredible. Incredible. I have so many questions. So
go for it.
like so many questions. Okay. So, and I even put out some questions to my audience too, and they had some questions for you too. Okay, so first of all, I just have to say, because I got tingles all over when you describe source as sun, because I'm a big meditator, and recently on my birthday, I had my most magical, I'm going to call it magical for lack of a better word, experience ever, where I felt like I went to source, and I felt like I plugged in, and I instantly started just feeling like exactly what you said. And when people were asking me like, what is like God look like? Cause I called it God, right? But I understand why you call it source, because that's what I was like, the best earthly comparison I could think of was the sun, but like a sun of love. Yes. And so that's just incredible. But okay, so many questions. So first question is, when you were on this, when you were in the afterlife, was there an awareness that you had just died? And did you have were you like, oh, bummer, I just died? Was that like a consciousness there?
When I first went into the light, I had no idea I died. I was trying to diagnose my condition.
You're like, what's going on?
I could see, I could hear, I could feel. I didn't have any smell. I could see through the back of my head, so I didn't have a solid body. And then all this information started flooding into my mind, kind of like every topic I'd ever wondered about while I was in human form started flooding into my mind. I still didn't think I had no idea that I died, because I was more alive than I'd ever been, and more conscious and more aware. And this love, and acceptance were just blowing me away. But I knew something had happened and that I was not going to go back to human life, because I missed some things about human life. I missed chocolate. I missed food and the wind and the sun and rain.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until later that when I was creating those or manifesting those various scenarios that were very Earth-like, that I realized I must have died. And I said, nah, I couldn't have died, because I heard you went into a tunnel, into the light. And I didn't do that. Well, the very first thing I manifested was a tunnel. And it wasn't a tunnel into the light. It was like a dirt tunnel with a railroad trellis above it. And it was smelly and moldy and full of insects. It's from like maybe the 1920s.
Oh my God. And they're like, no, wrong image. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Change scene.
So that's.
Well, that's something you mentioned. You mentioned that in the book that I found fascinating, that you actually, and again, please correct me if I got this wrong, but you said in the book that, and her book's backwards, and you should absolutely read it. I'm going to put a link below because you find this fascinating. She goes into more depth than we could humanly get in this hour in the book. But that you think that we even manifest our afterlife experience, as far as like if you have a certain image of like the pearly gates or certain religious figures and stuff, you believe that you will manifest seeing that, right?
Early on in the crossing over, see, when we souls leave the body and cross over, we think we're human, and we still have human beliefs. But we have these supernatural powers. We have the ability to, with a thought, create a physical environment. And so that's what we do. Once somebody realizes that, they're crossing over, that they've died, they start manifesting into physical reality that's completely real to them, whatever they expect the afterlife to be. Beautiful garden, pearly gates, angels, whatever. But as we transition very gently back to our eternal spiritual selves, that thinking like a human falls away, and that wanting to live in human environment falls away.
And is there an awareness of the loved ones you've left behind in that space?
If you want it to be. I like I said, I met my 5 most beloved eternal friends, but both my parents had died, and I didn't see them. I didn't see my dead sister and grandparents. I didn't see any of those people that I had loved in human life. But one of the things I learned in the afterlife is that when we incarnate, we only put part of our energy into the physical life. The rest of it stays in the afterlife. So you never actually leave your loved ones. Everybody that you love and everybody that loves you, you're all in, mental contact and telepathy all the time. And the part of you that's incarnated just seems like it's asleep.
Wow. And so you believe that we absolutely could have like telepathy and mental contact or communication with loved ones that are in the afterlife while we're here on Earth?
Yes, but I think the easiest way to do it is through dreaming. It's really, because, as I mentioned, we transition in the afterlife and we kind of get over being human.
Yeah.
Once we've gone through that, we don't really have any interest in, what's going on Earth. And we're not worried about our loved ones because they're right there with us in the afterlife. We don't care what's happening to a part of them that's having this dream of human life. So
Wow. So that's really interesting. So you would
yeah,
say, like, I often wonder, like, if I'm, sometimes I try to, I'll write like little letters to my grandma or, stuff like that. And then I think, like, is she too busy, like, just doing her own thing right now to, to be
well,
paying attention to what I'm doing?
yeah, that could be, and it's also there's no time in the afterlife. Time is a artificial construct of human life because humans live in a linear fashion. Once we get out of these bodies, everything's all at once. There's no linear to it.
Yeah.
So, the people who love us in the afterlife don't have any idea how long it's been, since they made contact. So that's why I say
Yeah.
I think it's easier to contact them through dreaming, and you set your intention before you go to bed that you're going to talk to your grandmother, and then watch your dreams. And what will happen is, if the person in the afterlife is able to get through to you, they'll appear in a dream, not as
Wow.
not as a, like a functioning character. They'll just kind of pop in there and start talking to you.
Yes. Wow. That's great. And so you mentioned kind of this experience of, like, the life review and also having chosen, our path, when we're here. Do you feel like do we choose the, like, when we come and when we leave, do we choose the way that we die, or, return to source?
We do pre-plan what I call an exit strategy,
Mm,
but circumstances change. We manifest physical life moment to moment. And so the exit strategy that we may have had in mind just isn't going to work, or it's going to take too long. The other thing is, we, and this I hope comforts those who have lost, you know, pre-birth children and live children. Once we've completed the goal we set for ourselves in human life, we go back to the afterlife. So for the soul that's leaving, it's a celebration. It's wonderful. It's success.
wow.
For the humans left behind, it's terrible, terrible tragedy.
So, so from that perspective of the knowledge that you gain in the afterlife, you, like you said, even if it's a kid or a baby, and while of course that's a tragedy here on earth, you believe that a soul couldn't be taken too soon, like they have to complete their whatever
I was,
their assignment
yeah,
was.
I was told no one dies before their time. That's why there are millions and millions of near-death experiencers, because they died, but it wasn't their time,
Yeah.
so they come back.
Yeah, and did anybody tell you, or did you have, like, did some, when you were going through this before you got sent back, was there anybody, like, well, nice seeing you, but it's not your time yet. We'll see you in a bit.
No, I was told it was my time.
Huh.
And the only reason that I came back was because I kept saying, somebody ought to tell those people, all this stuff. Um,
Wow. So you even manifested re coming into your body, essentially, right? Through that thought.
I guess. I was
You're like,
never
for better
really,
or worse.
well, I was never really sure whether I chose it or source, the core entity, the big entity source chose it.
Yeah. Well, it's such a gift. It's such a gift to have you back, and it's such a gift to have all of the knowledge and, like, just reading your book and all of this knowledge that you even shared right now about what's going on. I mean, what a gift to have someone on earth to be able to communicate this truth, and, from just the comfort of, like, how much that for my heart brings so much comfort in knowing that no one can go before their time, right? um and as even as hard as that might be for our human, I feel like there's just, when you say that, there is this, like, kind of essence of truth inside of me, for lack of a better word, that's like, yes, yes, that's right. um
Well, the other
and
thing we can do is we can, like what I've done is I have promised my body that I won't leave her again until she's ready. So we can choose to stick around.
Wow.
In order to take care of and be there for our bodies while they go through the rest of their lives in the dying process.
And how do you think this all affects the like the concept of, like, let's say you get a diagnosis and you, like, how you go about that, right? Let's just say, like, maybe it's not even a diagnosis. As simple as, like, taking really good care of your body and eating healthy and, taking all the supplements or doing whatever protocol. Like, do you feel like that's important more so or less so now after this experience?
I think it's very important, and I did before I died. But what I learned in the afterlife is that the healing energy modalities are the most powerful. Reiki, healing touch, pranic healing. Any kind of healing that uses energy, because that's source at work. I also learned that we have been given the power to heal our bodies and our emotional states. Now, there are some things that obviously, because of biology, we can't heal. Like, we're not going to regrow a missing limb. But within the bounds of biology, we have the power to self-heal.
And how does that process, and maybe this question also goes back into sharing what you learned about manifestation in the afterlife, right? Because that would kind of be a manifestation process, would it not?
Some of it is a manifesting process. Some of it is really just using the strength of will and character we souls have to stop our human hosts from damaging themselves. It's like anybody who's recovering from an addiction can tell you that it's extremely hard, and it's beyond human capability. It takes the strength of will and the superpowers of the soul to do something like that. But we can do that with any area of our life that's not healthy. We can decide we're going to change that and just take control of the body and change the behavior.
Yeah. Wow. And so does this for you, does that process like require, do you have a meditation practice or a tuning back into source or anything like that you do?
Meditation, not meditation, but manifesting was such an important topic when I was in the afterlife that I was literally told humans misunderstand it, and that there's this theory going around. I didn't know what the theory was. I didn't find that out until later. It was called the law of attraction. That, the souls inside human bodies just don't have any idea what kind of ability they have. And so I was 3 different times in 3 different ways shown and explained about manifesting. And
yes, tell us, please.
Yep, for self-healing or anything else, it's a very simple formula, but it's hard to do if you have never tried it. The formula is attention and intention. We have to pay attention to what it is we want to change in our lives. And then we have to form the intention at the soul level to make that change, or to bring something into our lives. And the attention part can be anything from, just what I call doing the legwork. Let's say you want a new job where you go into Indeed.com and, all the other online places, and you look for a job. You got to actually look for a job. Whatever it is that you want to manifest, you're probably not going to do it laying on your couch watching TV. You have to put some kind of effort into it, not only to kind of give yourself an idea of what it is that you want, to kind of flesh out the parameters of what you want, but also to put you in the places where what you are trying to manifest will be noticed by you. For example, like with a job, you can lay on your couch and think all you want about what kind of job you'd like to have and, where it might be and all that. But if you're not in the marketplace, no employer is going to come knock on your door and say, hey, I see you laying on the couch there. You want a job? You've got to be in the marketplace where the jobs are being offered. So that's the attention part of manifesting. The intention part, I think, is most easily done through a meditation that's different than what most people think of as meditation. My meditation is you sit quietly staring at a blank wall with your eyes at half mast, or even closed if that's more comfortable for you, and completely empty your mind of all words, all thoughts, that monologue that's always running around in your head. Completely empty, dead silence. And step back and watch and be aware of the fact that there's dead silence going on in your mind. Eventually, a thought's going to come in. And you're going to hear that thought come in. But you're the observer of the thought. So if you're observing the thought, who's thinking it? Well, that's thinking it is the human. And so if you can get yourself into the position where you're the observer of human thinking, then the observer part of you is the soul part. And that's where you've got the creative power. And that's where you form your intention to have or to do whatever it is you want to manifest. Like, so in the finding a job situation, you would say, I intend to find a job that's satisfying and commensurate with my skills, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have to do it, a number of times. And I have found recently it's best to say, right now. I intend to manifest this right now.
Right. Well, that actually brings it. So I want to clarify, but that brings up a great question that I actually got from one of my audience members too. So just so I get this straight, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, I'm trying this right now. When you get into that meditation, you become the observer. You get to the point where you quiet your mind. And for those of you who are just, if you're listening and you're just starting out, don't beat yourself up if it takes you a couple sits to get there. Or it takes you sitting a little bit longer to get there. Just keep trying. I've been meditating for years now, and I can get there fairly easy most days now. But there is still sometimes I'll just have a day where the thoughts are a little bit crazy. So don't discourage. It's worth the juice, But then once you get there, you get to that space, you realize you're the observer. Then how do we set the intention as the observer? Is it just like being in that kind of space where you're connected to that part of the soul, that from that space then you actually actively consciously conjure the thought of, I am ready to receive this amazing job that I'm going to love right now, or whatever the thought is we want to put in?
We can't contact our souls. We are the souls. These bodies are just human animals, and they're no more sophisticated than dogs or cats or horses or pigs or cows. They have uniform character traits. All the personality, all the creativity, all the quirks and the likes and the dislikes and the character traits that we think belong to a human being are actually our eternal personalities, souls. So as a soul, we are literally just a character within Source's mind. Source manifested the entire universe. As a little tiny part of that same mind, we can create a little tiny universe of an event or an experience in a human life. So our intention is to create it, to have it, to expect it. We don't
Yeah.
need to connect with anything. We've got the power right here in our own little invisible hands.
And so on your right now comment, which I love that, do you believe, because I actually got this question the other day too from something I was talking about, but it's so applicable to this. So just do you believe in, or the message that you received in the afterlife, does it correlate with such things as like divine timing? Like, let's say the theory that if you're sitting on you're doing your thing, you've got your attention, you're on Indeed, you're ready to call on that job, and like, is there a possibility that you're not meant to have a job for a certain amount of time? And I'm just using this example, and that like there's like a divine timing of when you're going to get that new job? Or do you believe because we're such powerful creators that for that kind of stuff we get, like, we can call it in right now if we tapped into it?
I would have to say that I was told when I was taught about manifesting in the afterlife that there's no such thing as divine timing. That
Oh, yes.
that is part of the human concept of, we're here and God's out there and God controls our lives. I was taught that we are God. There's no out there to it. It's all in here. And we control our lives. So is
Oh
there
my God, I love this so much.
Yeah, is there a possibility that you're not going to get the job that you want until a certain time? Yes. Not because somebody else doesn't want you to have it, but there's no time in the afterlife. See, when you're using your spiritual powers, 1 second can be a month in human life, can be 10 years in human life. So that's why I say right now. I want it right now, or I'm going to manifest it right now. Yeah. Otherwise, you could be left waiting for a long time if you're not I'm trying to think of the word. If you're not used to doing conscious manifesting, if you're not a practiced manifester, the more you practice, the faster you get things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Are there, you're, I love these like huge concepts that are being blown up right now around that, and also around the law of attraction, right? So you got information in the afterlife essentially that this law of attraction thing we have is not really the thing. So all of the kind of spiritual contracts that say that we have to be in a high vibration, connect with our joy, and all of that brings us closer to source, and helps us manifest faster, you're saying you in your experience you wouldn't agree with?
I would say that those are very human ways of thinking about life. Humans project what they observe about human behavior onto their deities. So when you experience in human life that you've got to do certain things in order to earn something that you want, that's projected onto source in the afterlife. And it doesn't belong there because source is nothing like a human. So, and when it comes to higher vibration, what I was taught in the afterlife is that we are source. There's no way to have a higher vibration than that. That's all there is.
Right.
And
Wow.
we don't need to connect with our joy because we are joy. One of source's innate character traits, and one of the character traits we enjoy in the afterlife, is joy and bliss. So we are that way naturally if we can kind of push the human personality and human emotions to the side for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we don't have to get closer to source because we are source.
We are source.
And I know this is a completely different way of looking at life, but it's the truth that source showed me. And it, to me, when I got back in this body and I was remembering all these things, I thought, wow, that just takes an awful lot of the burden off of me. I don't have to figure out how to act in order to please source. I don't have to make the best decision ever, I don't have to try to be a certain way or stay on a certain path. I don't have to do any of that stuff. All I have to do is go inside and be me.
Wow. Wow. That is so beautiful. And so on that topic, what has most significantly shifted in your life since this experience, now that you've been kind of living this knowledge?
I guess I would have to say that I became a warmer, more, I don't want to say more loving person because I've always been a very loving, empathic person, but I didn't show it. I was so consumed with working and earning money to take care of myself because I knew nobody else would do it, that I didn't take care of my friendships. I didn't take care of my family members. I didn't harvest and grow and develop the love that I had for other people. And I think most people who knew me before and know me now would say I'm warmer now and more likely to show love. I mean, I tell people that I love them even if it startles them. And sometimes it does.
I love that. um so I want to hear just a little bit more, since it seemed to be you had three different experiences. um do you feel like there was a specific reason why you went back that second and third time? Was it to learn more, or
No, I
do you have
died.
any? It was just because you died.
Yeah, I just died.
But you clearly don't want to stay there, Nancy.
Well, here's
You
the
keep
story
coming
on
back.
here's the story on that one. The first time I was kind of like tricked into coming back, because like I said, I don't know if source, the main part of source sent me back or I sent me back. But the second time, um, I went into the afterlife and I went before what I call my council. And there had been a few near-death experiencers who described like going before a court or a council or someplace where they were judged. My experience is that that's not not really judgment, although it can come across that way. Like in my second experience, I went back in the afterlife and I literally came before this group of light beings, and they told me that I had not um, worked my mission. That I came back here to tell people all this stuff and I wasn't doing it. That can
Ooh.
feel like judgment. Although I didn't take it that way, I took it as, hey, it's like a slap up against the side of the head. Hey, wake up and smell the roses. You're not doing what you came back to do. And they told me that the body was dying and that I had a choice. I could come home and stay home, no harm, no foul. Wasn't going to be treated as a breach of contract or a disappointment or anything like that. Or I could go back and work my mission, but if I went back, I would suffer with Nancy for the rest of her life. So, of course, I said, pick me to suffer. I'll go back. I'll go back. No, I wanted to do my mission. And so I came back.
And so, what is suffering with Nancy like?
Suffering. Nancy's had a lot of physical injuries, a lot of diseases. Right now, I'm managing stage 3 metastatic breast cancer,
Oh my
among
God.
other things. One of the side effects of having died can be a lot of allergic reactions, and I'm allergic to half the world. So it really restricts what I can do, what I can eat. It makes it hard sometimes to just do the simple things of life. Like I'm allergic to so many toothpastes and hand lotions and, just little things like that. Um, and, the losses of loved ones, the suffering that all people incarnated into humans suffer.
Wow.
And I also suffer with the world because, I'm an empath and I feel the grieving and the anger and the disappointment and the hurt all around me. And that's suffering.
Yeah. And do you feel that your does your experience of at this point, I've got to believe, like, full on knowing what is next after this body is done, um does that make it easier to deal with your health journey and with breast cancer and stuff like that? Does it, obviously, I wouldn't imagine it would make the physical suffering and the pain and stuff like that easier, but is there a an absence of being scared of the eventual end?
I'm not afraid of leaving this life. For the first 2 years after I came back the first time, all I wanted to do was go home, back to the
Mm,
afterlife. I did not want to be here at all. Now, I wasn't suicidal, but I was homesick.
yeah.
Now, I don't want to suffer death. I've died 3 times, and hallelujah, none of them was well, the second one was pretty much suffering, but not pain. I don't want to go through the human suffering with Nanci, even though I promised her I would do that. And I keep my word. I wouldn't be here if I didn't keep my word.
Well, you mentioned, I think you mentioned too that sometimes when the body is going through such intense suffering before it dies, that the soul pops out, right?
Yes, that's why I had to promise Nanci I wouldn't do that.
Oh, she didn't want you to pop out.
No.
Oh man.
But yes, we can choose not to feel the suffering. And that's why I'm sure there are, people in your audience who have had the experience of feeling like the soul left the body before the body died.
mm,
You
yeah,
can
like,
just kind of feel when there's nobody home in a body when
yeah,
you're
I
close to
felt
death.
that. I felt that a bit with my grandma. I the morning that she passed, I got to say goodbye via FaceTime because we're not allowed to go into the hospital with COVID and stuff, even though she didn't pass from COVID. Um, but after I said my goodbyes and I was kind of in the meditation space and like tuning into her energy, I felt like she went, and my parents actually also experienced that too, where they had just had this like feeling, that she had gone, maybe about 15 minutes or so before her body like officially was done.
Yeah. I'm so
uh
sorry you lost your grandmother.
Thank you. It's
But
okay though. This all, I mean, it's thrown me on this beautiful journey to discover so much of this. And so, she guided me so much in life, and she led me onto some really incredible information in death. So, um all of this, I think, also just, I hope, I know so many people are going through grief this year. I've had so many clients
yes.
lose loved ones this year, and I that's why I think your message is so important. While there's, I'm going to have you talk a little bit more before we end on the manifestation component, because I know a lot of people are really curious, and that was such a theme for you in your experience. But this this concept, or this, this truth. And I really believe, like when I was reading your book, and I think when I hear you speak, and when people listen to this podcast, there's a part of us that feels it as truth, as deeper truth. um and I think that people that have lost people in their physical form this year will feel comfort in knowing that this is um this is where they're at, that they're in. And you call it the afterlife. um some people call it the in-between life, right?
Well, I think if your focus is on incarnation, you would call it that. My
Yeah.
focus is on eternal life.
Yeah. So yeah, so it makes sense. It would be the afterlife. And now,
Yeah.
did you find any knowledge there about when souls come in, like when a soul comes in through, through the, when it's a baby, um through
Yes.
the embryo and whatnot? Is
Yes.
there? Yes, tell us.
And this is in my second book, which is called Backwards Guidebook. I've got 5 books.
Okay, I'm on to that next. So guys, I
Okay.
cannot stress enough how mandatory reading for all of you guys listening. It's just so good.
Well, thank you. It took me 5 books to download everything, from that I learned in the afterlife and experience there, and put it in words on paper. But anyway, in terms of when the soul enters the fetus, it can be any time. It depends a lot upon the individual soul and how experienced they are in entering, incarnating into humans. If they have a lot of experience, they may wait until, not that long before birth. If they have very little experience, they may join the fetus in an earlier stage. Or if the soul feels like this particular body that they're going to be entering is going to need a little more um, time to get used to, the soul being in there, they may enter earlier. So there's no set time when a soul enters a fetus. But I was told in the afterlife that, because I asked, about abortion and miscarriage, that if a particular human body doesn't work out for a soul, they just enter into another one. See, I was told we don't pick the body, we pick the parents.
Oh,
And
I was going to ask you this. Yeah, do you think
yeah,
that does the soul kind of observe or try to communicate with any of the parents before it comes in?
I don't know about communicating, but I did see that we preview the kinds of things that would happen during a life if, you know, we pick parents, we pick mom and dad, and they're going to have, a child that reflects, their values and their lifestyle and their genetics. And we get to see a little bit of what that life could be like based upon those parameters. And in fact, when we have that feeling of deja vu,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I've done this before. That's that moment is something we saw in that preview in the afterlife before we incarnated. That's why we recognize it. And
Wow.
that's why it feels like we've done it before.
I've had so many of those deja vu moments. I love that.
Yeah. Um, I lost my train of
All
thought.
right. Yeah, so that we get sneak previews before we decide which parents.
Yeah, but like I said, we pick the parents, not the child. So if a particular fetus miscarriage, we just,
Show up in the next one.
yeah, or 1, 2 children later or whatever. And if those particular parents don't have any more children, we may pick different parents.
Wow. Wow. So much to unpack.
That's why it took
um,
me 5 books to do it.
I know, that's right. I'm like, I can't ask possibly all the questions. What is so the title of her first book and the series is Backwards, right? And so what do you think is like the biggest thing that we got backwards?
That we are down here and God is up there, and we have to earn our way to God by following rules that keep changing and we don't know what they are, and that God controls our lives and can punish us if we do things wrong. None of that exists. That's all backwards. That's human thinking based upon what humans have seen other humans act like.
Yeah. And what do you think we have back? We already kind of talked about this, but is there anything else you'd like to share about what you downloaded around manifestation that you think people need to hear right now?
Well, just that, I get a lot of email and YouTube comments expressing frustration over why painful things happen to people. They feel like victims and their life just happens to them without their consent. And even worse than that, they feel powerless to change their lives. We all see good people suffering and bad people prospering, and ask, how can a loving God allow life to be so unfair? And the answer is, it's not unfair, it's free will. We each have the identical, exact same ability to manifest a better life for ourselves. We just have to exercise that power. And I think my last book is called Create a New Reality, Move Beyond Law of Attraction Theory. And it's everything I can remember learning about manifesting. And I wrote the book last because it took me years to gather the manifesting stories from my readers that I put in
Mm-hmm.
there. So
Wow.
it's got a lot of examples in there to show, you know, how to do it.
Great. Well, definitely put that link below as well. And I'm excited to dive into that one myself once I make my way through the whole series. Um, So incredible. So incredible. Nanci, I can't even tell you what an honor it is to have you on the podcast. I'm just, I know I'm still processing all the information. I can't wait to re-listen to this episode. And all of the different nuggets that you just dropped so casually. And I'm so glad that you decided to come back. And I'm sad that you have to suffer, but I am eternally grateful that you're sharing this message and sharing the truth, because gosh, we need it. We need to hear it. Um, yeah. Any final statement before I let you go?
Thank you so much for talking with me and letting me fulfill my mission.
Oh, well, it was my honor, a pleasure to have you, and we're happy to have you back here whenever you want to talk.
Okay, it's a deal.
Awesome. Thank you.